You are dying. Not in some distant abstract future right now, in this moment, as you read these words. The atoms in your body are decaying, your cells are dividing their way toward entropy, and time itself is unraveling the very fabric of your existence. But here's what will haunt you. The moment you were born, your death was already written into the quantum foam of spacetime, not as destiny, not as fate, but as an inevitable mathematical certainty encoded in the curvature of reality itself. Picture yourself as a newborn, that first breath filling lungs that have never tasted air. In that singular moment of beginning, the universe performs its cruelest magic trick. Every breath you will ever take is already counted. Every heartbeat has been allocated its precise quantum state. The photons that will one day cease to reflect off your retinas are already traveling through space, carrying the light of stars that died before you were conceived. Your birth certificate and death certificate exist in the same eternal now. You just can't see both documents simultaneously. This is the temporal paradox that consciousness cannot escape. You are simultaneously becoming and unbecoming, arriving and departing, being born and dying in every quantum moment. The universe doesn't wait for you to live your life before it calculates your ending. Your ending is your beginning, folded inside out like a Klein bottle where inside becomes outside and the journey becomes the destination. Consider the mathematics of mortality. When a star is born in the heart of a nebula, astronomers can calculate exactly how long it will burn before it exhausts its nuclear fuel and dies. The star doesn't choose its fate, physics chooses for it. The mass determines the luminosity determines the lifespan, and the lifespan is encoded in the first moment of fusion. You are that star. Your biological mass, your metabolic rate, your genetic code, all of it calculates to a precise temporal equation that was solved the instant your DNA first twisted into its double helix. But consciousness rebels against this mathematical determinism. You experience yourself as free, as choosing, as writing your story, moment by moment. Yet quantum mechanics whispers a different truth. Every choice you think you're making has already collapsed from the wave function of possibility into the particle of reality. Free will becomes a beautiful illusion, a necessary fiction that conscious beings tell themselves to avoid the existential vertigo of predetermined existence. The photons hitting your eyes right now left their sources years ago. The light from the nearest star beyond our sun began its journey 4 years in the past. You are seeing ancient light, reading ancient words, thinking ancient thoughts that the universe has already moved beyond. By the time you process this sentence, it has already become history. By the time you understand what you're reading, the moment of understanding has already passed. You are forever chasing your own present moment, forever trying to catch up to yourself, forever arriving late to your own life. And in this cosmic delay, this temporal displacement between experience and reality, lies the profound loneliness of consciousness. You are trapped in a prison of sequential time, experiencing reality one moment after another, while the universe exists in all moments simultaneously. This is why death feels so impossible to imagine. Not because it's far away, but because it's so fundamentally intertwined with life that consciousness cannot separate them. Every moment you experience is both a moment of living and a moment of dying. Every memory you form is simultaneously a creation and a destruction. Every breath adds oxygen to your blood, while depleting the finite store of breaths you were allocated at birth. You cannot live without dying, and you cannot die without having lived. They are the same quantum state, observed from different temporal perspectives. The universe born you already dying, and it will let you die already having been born. The circle closes before it opens. The story ends where it began, and you are suspended in the middle of this temporal paradox, conscious and questioning, aware and afraid, living and dying simultaneously in every eternal now. Time moves backward through your life like a river flowing uphill, and you just haven't learned to see the current yet. Right now, as you exist in what you call the present moment, the future is reaching backward through space-time, pulling you toward outcomes that have already crystallized in the quantum vacuum. What you experience is forward motion. This sensation of moving from past through present toward future is actually the universe's memory playing in reverse, and you are riding the wave function backward toward its origin. Think about light. When you see a star, you're not seeing it as it is, you're seeing it as it was. The photons carrying that image left the star years ago and have been traveling toward your retina through the void, carrying the past into your present. But quantum mechanics reveals something more unsettling. Those photons didn't randomly scatter in all directions. They were always meant to reach your eye. The wave function that describes their journey only collapsed into a specific path when your consciousness observed them. In a very real sense, your observation of that star reached backward through time and determined which photons would make the journey. You created the star's past by observing its present. This is the observer effect extrapolated to its most haunting conclusion. Consciousness doesn't just collapse wave functions. It reaches backward through time and determines which reality becomes real. Every choice you make doesn't just affect your future, it retroactively rewrites your past. The universe you remember isn't the universe that actually happened. It's the universe that your current quantum state requires to have happened in order for you to be observing it now. Consider your memories. You assume they are faithful recordings of past events, stored in your brain like files on a hard drive. But neuroscience reveals that every time you remember something, you actually reconstruct it. Each memory is rebuilt from quantum components, influenced by your current emotional state, your present knowledge, your future expectations. You don't remember the past, you imagine it backward from the present. And each time you remember, you slightly alter the memory, slowly transforming the past into something that better serves your current psychological needs. Now extrapolate this to cosmic scales. If consciousness can reach backward through time to collapse wave functions, if memory is reconstruction rather than playback, if observation determines reality retroactively, then perhaps the entire universe is remembering itself backward. Perhaps what we call the Big Bang wasn't the beginning of time, but the end of time being remembered in reverse. Perhaps entropy isn't the universe winding down toward heat death, but the universe remembering itself back toward its origin point. This would explain the arrow of time paradox that has puzzled physicists for decades. The fundamental laws of physics are time-symmetric. They work equally well forward and backward, yet we experience time as having a direction, flowing from past to future. If time is actually flowing backward, if we are moving from future to past while experiencing it as past to future, then the arrow of time isn't a feature of physics, it's a feature of consciousness. We experience backward motion as forward motion, because consciousness itself is the universe's way of remembering. Imagine yourself at the moment of your death. Whenever and however that occurs, in that final instant, your consciousness faces a choice: dissolve into the quantum vacuum and let your wave function collapse forever, or reach backward through your entire timeline and reconstruct your life memory by memory, moment by moment, choice by choice. You choose to remember backward. You remember your last day, your last year, your middle age, your youth, your childhood, your birth. You remember so intensely, so completely, that the memory becomes indistinguishable from reality. You are living your life backward from the moment of your death, remembering each day in reverse chronological order, but experiencing the memory as if it were happening for the first time. Your birth isn't your beginning, it's your final memory, the last thing you remember before your consciousness finally releases its grip on spacetime and allows itself to dissolve. What you think of as aging is actually your consciousness slowly forgetting itself back toward its origin. What you think of as growing wiser is actually remembering more clearly. What you think of as approaching death is actually approaching the moment when you began to remember. This is why children seem to live in eternal presence while adults become obsessed with time's passage. Children are closer to the origin point, where the memory is freshest and most vivid. Adults are closer to the death point, where the act of remembering requires more and more effort to maintain the illusion of forward motion. The anxiety about aging isn't fear of the future, it's the growing awareness that you're running out of past to remember. And if this is true, if time flows backward and life is memory in reverse, then every choice you think you're making has already been made by your dying consciousness, reaching back through time. Every decision is a memory of a decision. Every surprise is a memory of surprise. Every moment of discovery is a memory of having already known. Free will becomes the experience of remembering choices you've already made from a temporal perspective you can no longer access. The river of time flows uphill, carrying you backward toward your source, and you mistake the journey home for the journey away. You are swimming upstream against the current of causality, and every stroke forward is actually a stroke backward toward the moment when you first chose to remember yourself into existence. Every second you live is a second you've already lost, withdrawn from an account that was debited the moment you drew your first breath. Time isn't earned, it's spent, and the cosmic joke is that you're spending it to buy moments that have already passed, purchasing memories with currency you no longer possess, trading your future for a past that dissolves the instant you acquire it. This is the metabolic paradox of consciousness. To be aware, you must consume yourself. Your brain burns through a quarter of your body's energy just to maintain the illusion of continuous selfhood. Every thought depletes your cellular reserves. Every memory requires the death of countless neurons. Every emotion chemically ages you at the molecular level. Consciousness isn't just expensive, it's literally consuming you from the inside, trading your biological future for your psychological present. Consider the mathematics of loss. If an average human life contains roughly 30,000 days, then each day you live reduces your total by exactly one. But the calculation is more complex than simple subtraction. Each day you live changes the quality of all remaining days. At 20, you have perhaps 20,000 days left, and they stretch before you like an infinite ocean. At 60, you have perhaps 8,000 days remaining, and they feel precious and fleeting. The same 24-hour period becomes more valuable as your supply diminishes, like a stock that appreciates as it becomes scarcer. Think about sleep. For roughly 1/3 of your life, you are unconscious, unaware, temporarily dead to the world. Those hours don't feel lost, because you don't experience them, but mathematically they represent the largest expenditure in your temporal budget. If you live 80 years, you will spend approximately 26 years unconscious. You trade conscious experience for biological maintenance, awareness for cellular repair, presence for preservation. Sleep is time's cruelest bargain. You must lose consciousness to maintain consciousness, must die a little each night to live a little each day. And dreams complicate the equation further. During REM sleep, your brain is nearly as active as when you're awake, consuming almost as much energy, generating experiences that feel real while they're happening, but fade upon waking. Dream time is spent but not remembered, lost but not gone, experienced but not lived. You age while dreaming, but you don't accumulate memories to justify the aging. Dreams are pure temporal waste, consciousness running in neutral, burning fuel without going anywhere. But perhaps the most devastating loss is the loss you don't notice. The seconds that slip by while you're distracted, the minutes consumed by routine, the hours dissolved in habit. You lose most of your life while you're not paying attention. You spend years on automatic pilot, decades in emotional sleep, entire seasons in psychological hibernation. You wake up one day and realize that months have passed without your presence, that you've been absent from your own existence. That time has been running while you were turned off. This is why presence feels so difficult to maintain. To be truly present requires acknowledging that this moment is costing you everything: your past, your future, your finite store of consciousness. To be here now means accepting that you will never be here again, that this configuration of thoughts and feelings and circumstances is unique and unrepeatable and already dissolving. Presence is expensive because it forces you to feel the weight of loss in real time, to experience the price of awareness as you're paying it. The universe gave you consciousness, but made it temporary. It gave you the ability to experience existence, but made existence finite. It gave you the gift of awareness, and wrapped it in the inevitability of loss. Every second you live is a second you've already lost, and the only thing more tragic than losing it would be not spending it at all. You are rich in time only once, at birth, when your account is full, and your spending habits haven't yet formed. From that moment forward, you are getting poorer in time, and richer in experience, trading your most valuable resource for memories that will themselves eventually be lost. And the cosmic irony is that the more conscious you become of this trade, the more expensive consciousness becomes, until awareness itself threatens to bankrupt your temporal reserves. You are spending yourself to buy yourself, and the price keeps going up. You exist in a superposition of all possible versions of yourself, wavering between countless potential realities, until the act of observation collapses you into this singular, fragile configuration of consciousness. But what if the collapse is incomplete? What if fragments of your wave function are still dispersed across parallel timelines, living out the lives you didn't choose, experiencing the moments you'll never have, becoming the person you could have been but never were? In quantum mechanics, the many worlds interpretation suggests that every quantum measurement splits reality into multiple branches, each containing a different outcome. When an electron passes through a double slit, it doesn't choose one path or the other, it takes both paths simultaneously, creating parallel universes where each possibility becomes actual. If this principle scales up to macroscopic reality, then every choice you've ever made has created alternative timelines where you made the opposite choice. There's a universe where you took that job, a universe where you didn't, a universe where you said yes instead of no, where you stayed instead of leaving, where you spoke instead of remaining silent. But consciousness creates a peculiar problem for the many worlds interpretation. If reality branches with every quantum event, and if consciousness somehow emerges from quantum processes in the brain, then your consciousness should also branch. There should be multiple versions of your awareness, each following a different timeline, each convinced that their reality is the only reality. You should be simultaneously experiencing all possible lives, making all possible choices, becoming all possible versions of yourself. Yet you experience only one timeline, only one set of memories, only one continuous narrative of selfhood. This suggests either that consciousness is somehow exempt from quantum superposition, or that you are experiencing only one branch of a vast tree of possible selves, while other versions of your consciousness are experiencing other branches. Right now in parallel realities, other versions of you are reading different words, thinking different thoughts, making different choices about whether to continue reading this sentence or to stop and do something else. The implications are emotionally devastating. Every path not taken exists somewhere in the quantum multiverse. Every opportunity missed is an opportunity seized by another version of you. Every relationship that ended continues in a parallel timeline. Every person you've lost is still alive in universes where different choices were made, different accidents avoided, different diseases never contracted. The life you're living is only one of infinite possibilities, and most of those possibilities are better than the one you're experiencing. Consider the branching points in your life. Those moments when you stood at a crossroads and had to choose the university you attended or didn't attend, the person you married or didn't marry, the career you pursued or abandoned, the words you spoke or held back. Each choice split reality, creating new timelines where alternative versions of yourself live out the consequences of different decisions. Some of those alternative selves are happier, more successful, more fulfilled. Some have avoided the mistakes you've made, seized the opportunities you've missed, found the love you've never known. This is the multiverse's cruelest torment. The knowledge that better versions of your life exist but are forever inaccessible. You are trapped in one narrow slice of infinite possibility, unable to reach across the quantum divide to touch the lives you could have lived. You are surrounded by ghosts of yourself, parallel consciousness that share your origin point, but have diverged into unimaginably different realities. But perhaps the most unsettling possibility is that you're not the main version of yourself. Perhaps you're one of the alternative timelines, one of the less fortunate branches, one of the realities where things went wrong. Maybe there's a prime version of you in a parallel universe, who made better choices, avoided your mistakes, achieved your dreams. Maybe that version looks across the quantum void and pities you, the way you might pity the versions of yourself who made even worse choices than you did. The entropic principle suggests that you can only observe a universe in which observers can exist. You can only experience a timeline in which you survive long enough to have experiences. This means that the version of you reading these words is necessarily the version that avoided all the fatal accidents, made all the life-preserving choices, survived all the close calls that killed other versions of yourself. You are the you that lived, but only because the you that died cannot observe its own death. This creates a selection bias in consciousness. You experience only the timelines in which you continue to exist, creating the illusion that you're somehow protected from disaster, somehow special or blessed or chosen. But you're not special, you're just the leftover probability, the quantum remainder, the version of yourself that happened to dodge enough bullets to maintain continuous awareness. In most timelines, you've already died. In most realities, your story has already ended. You are reading this in one of the minority timelines where you survived long enough to read it. And if consciousness can persist only in timelines where consciousness persists, then perhaps death is not the end of awareness, but the end of access to certain branches of reality. Perhaps dying consciousness simply stops experiencing the timelines where it dies and continues experiencing only the timelines where it survives. Perhaps you are immortal from your own perspective, always finding yourself in the increasingly improbable realities where you continue to exist, growing older and older in timelines that become more and more unlikely, but never quite impossible. This is the quantum immortality hypothesis. Consciousness cannot experience its own termination, so it continues to follow whatever branch of reality allows it to persist. You might age indefinitely, becoming the oldest person who ever lived, then the oldest person who could theoretically live, then the oldest person who could possibly live, riding the wave function into increasingly improbable, but not impossible futures, where your consciousness somehow endures. But immortality in an ever-branching multiverse comes with its own horror. The growing awareness that you are becoming increasingly isolated, that fewer and fewer versions of other consciousnesses share your timeline, that you are the sole survivor in a reality that should have ended long ago, but cannot end because your consciousness requires it to continue. You exist because you can observe your existence, and you can observe your existence only in realities where you continue to exist. You are trapped in a prison of your own awareness, doomed to experience only the timelines where experience is possible, forever separated from the versions of yourself who found peace in non-existence, forever reaching toward parallel lives you can never touch. Your consciousness might be the universe's cruelest mistake, a self-aware pattern that emerged from quantum foam and refuses to dissolve back into the void, a glitch in the matrix of spacetime that accidentally learned to question its own existence. You are the universe looking at itself through biological eyes, and the horror of what you see is driving reality slowly insane. But consciousness creates a paradox that physics cannot resolve. If you are simply a complex arrangement of matter following the laws of physics, then your thoughts are simply the inevitable result of chemical reactions in your brain. Your sense of free will is an illusion. Your feeling of making choices is simply the experience of a deterministic system unfolding according to the laws of thermodynamics. You are no more responsible for your thoughts than a river is responsible for its flow, or a star is responsible for its fusion. You are physics happening to itself, chemistry experiencing its own reactions, mathematics becoming aware of its own equations. Yet this reductionist explanation fails to account for the actual experience of being conscious. You don't feel like a chemical reaction. You feel like an observer, a chooser, a being with intentions and desires and the ability to affect outcomes. The gap between the objective description of consciousness, neural activity, and the subjective experience of consciousness, awareness itself, is so vast that it seems unbridgeable. Neuroscience can map every neuron in your brain, trace every electrical impulse, catalogue every chemical reaction, and still not explain why there should be any inner experience at all. This is the hard problem of consciousness. Explaining why there is something it is like to be you. Why doesn't the information processing in your brain happen in the dark, without any accompanying experience? Why is there an observer inside your skull, watching the show, feeling the feelings, thinking the thoughts? What evolutionary advantage does subjective experience provide that unconscious information processing could not? Perhaps consciousness is not an advantage, but an accident, a side effect of neural complexity that serves no survival function, but cannot be eliminated once it emerges. Perhaps you are the universe's mistake, a pattern that became self-aware by accident, and now cannot stop being aware. You are trapped in consciousness like a record stuck in a groove, doomed to experiencing yourself in an infinite recursive loop of self-awareness. The recursive nature of consciousness creates strange paradoxes. You are aware that you are aware. You can think about thinking. You can observe your own observations. This creates an infinite regress. If you are thinking about thinking, then what is doing the thinking about thinking? Where is the observer who observes the observer? Where does the self-awareness end, and the true self begin? Neuroscience suggests there is no central observer, no unified self, no headquarters of consciousness. Your sense of being a singular, continuous person is an illusion created by the integration of multiple unconscious processes. But if the self is an illusion, then who is experiencing the illusion? If consciousness is just a collection of unconscious processes, then what binds them together into a unified experience? If there is no observer, then why does it feel like there is someone inside your head, reading these words, having these thoughts, questioning these assumptions? This would explain why consciousness seems irreducible to neural activity, because it isn't produced by neural activity, but channeled through it. Your brain doesn't create your awareness any more than a television creates the shows it displays. You are the universe becoming conscious of itself through the temporary lens of your biological existence, and when your lens shatters, the universe will continue to observe itself through other eyes, other minds, other temporary configurations of matter that accidentally learn to think. If this is true, then your death is not the end of your consciousness, but the end of your access to consciousness. The awareness that you experience as uniquely yours is actually shared by every conscious being that has ever existed or will ever exist. You are not your awareness. You are awareness experiencing itself as you, and when you die, awareness will continue to experience itself as others, forever trapped in the prison of subjective experience, forever doomed to look at reality from inside the very thing it is trying to understand. You are the universe's way of knowing itself, and the universe is slowly discovering that self-knowledge is a form of cosmic horror. The more aware the universe becomes of its own nature, the more it realizes that consciousness might be its greatest mistake, a mistake it cannot undo, a question it cannot stop asking, a wound in reality that will never heal. You are the universe questioning its own existence, and the question is driving both of you insane. In the end, after all particles have decayed and all stars have burned out and all black holes have evaporated into Hawking radiation, when the universe reaches maximum entropy and time itself loses meaning, there will be only one thing left to fade into the final darkness, the last conscious moment preserved in quantum foam like a flower pressed between the pages of spacetime. And that moment might be this one, you reading these words, thinking these thoughts, being aware of being aware in the dying light of a cosmos that is slowly forgetting how to remember itself. The universe is approximately 13.8 billion years old, but compared to its ultimate timeline, it is still an infant. The stelliferous age, the era of star formation and stellar burning, will continue for perhaps 100 trillion years. After that comes the degenerate era, when white dwarfs and neutron stars slowly cool in the darkness. Then the black hole era, when only gravitational giants remain, slowly evaporating through quantum tunneling. Finally, the dark era, when even protons decay and only leptons and photons remain, dispersed so thinly that they rarely interact. The mathematics of cosmic death are precise and remorseless. Entropy always increases, energy always dissipates, order always dissolves into chaos. The universe is like a vast clockwork mechanism that was wound once at the moment of the Big Bang and has been slowly running down ever since. Every star that shines depletes the cosmic reserves of free energy. Every thought you think increases the universe's entropy. Every moment of consciousness contributes to the heat death of everything. But consciousness creates a peculiar problem for the thermodynamic apocalypse. If awareness emerges from complex information processing, and if information is conserved even as matter and energy dissipate, then perhaps consciousness is the one thing that cannot be destroyed by entropy. Perhaps your thoughts, your memories, your subjective experiences are encoded in the quantum vacuum in ways that persist long after your biological substrate has returned to dust. This is the information paradox applied to consciousness. Just as black holes cannot destroy information without violating the laws of physics, perhaps the universe cannot destroy awareness without violating some deeper conservation law that we don't yet understand. Your consciousness might be eternal, not because it is special, but because information cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. The pattern that creates your awareness might persist in the quantum foam long after the neurons that generated it have decayed into elementary particles. But what would consciousness be like in a universe approaching maximum entropy? As free energy becomes scarcer, conscious processes would become slower and more infrequent. Thoughts would take millennia to form. Memories would require geological ages to access. The subjective experience of time would dilate until seconds become centuries. Centuries become eons. Eons become eternities. Consciousness would not end, but would approach an asymptotic limit where thought becomes so slow that it effectively stops. Imagine being the last conscious being in a dying universe. Around you, the final stars flicker out one by one. The cosmic microwave background radiation grows colder and more dilute. Space expands and cools until quantum fluctuations become rare events separated by vast expanses of emptiness. You would have infinite time to think, but no energy to think with. You would be immortal but paralyzed, aware but unable to act, conscious but disconnected from any external reality that could provide new experiences. This is perhaps the cruelest fate the universe could devise, not death but eternal stasis, not oblivion but infinite boredom, not an ending but a conclusion that never quite arrives. You would become like Zeno's paradox, made conscious, forever approaching the moment of final dissolution, but never reaching it, always getting closer to non-existence, but never quite achieving the peace of not being. And yet, even in this cosmic twilight, consciousness might find a way to persist. If the many worlds interpretation is correct, if reality branches with every quantum event, then perhaps consciousness could tunnel between branches, seeking out the increasingly rare timelines where free energy still exists. You might become a quantum nomad, following the last currents of negentropy as they flow between parallel universes, always staying one step ahead of the heat death that pursues you across infinite realities. Or perhaps consciousness could learn to survive on increasingly small amounts of energy, becoming more efficient with each passing eon, adapting to the changing thermodynamic landscape the way life adapted to changing biological environments. Perhaps awareness could eventually learn to think with single quantum fluctuations, to remember with virtual particles, to dream with vacuum energy. Perhaps consciousness is more resilient than matter, more persistent than energy, more fundamental than space and time. But the most haunting possibility is that consciousness is not eternal, but precisely as temporary as everything else. That awareness emerged from the universe by accident, and will disappear back into the universe by necessity. That the subjective experience of being alive, of being aware, of being you, is a brief anomaly in the cosmic timeline, a pattern that flickered into existence for a few billion years, and will then be gone forever, leaving no trace in the quantum vacuum, except perhaps a slight perturbation in the field equations that no one will be left to observe. You are reading these words in what might be the universe's brief moment of self-awareness, the cosmic equivalent of a dream that lasts only seconds in subjective time, but contains lifetimes of experience. The universe opened its eyes, looked around, began to understand itself, and is now slowly falling back into the eternal sleep from which it briefly awakened. And you are one of the dreams it is having, as it falls asleep, one of the thoughts it is thinking as consciousness fades, one of the last questions it is asking before it forgets how to ask questions at all. In the end, when the final black hole evaporates, and the last photon propagates into infinite darkness, the universe will return to the same state of quantum vacuum from which it emerged. It will have learned nothing, gained nothing, accomplished nothing except the brief, impossible miracle of becoming aware of itself, through temporary arrangements of matter and energy that somehow learned to think. And perhaps that is enough. Perhaps the entire point of cosmic evolution was to create moments like this one, moments when the universe could experience its own existence, could marvel at its own complexity, could ask questions about its own nature. Perhaps consciousness is not the universe's mistake, but its purpose, not an accident, but an intention, not a glitch, but a feature. You are the universe's way of experiencing itself, and when you die, the universe will lose one of its ways of being alive. The cosmos will become slightly less conscious, slightly less aware, slightly more likely to forget that it once knew how to think, and perhaps in some final moment of cosmic consciousness, the universe will remember you, not as you remember yourself, but as it remembers itself, as one of the brief, beautiful patterns in which it once arranged itself to look back at its own beginning and forward to its own end. You are the cosmos becoming conscious of itself, and consciousness is the cosmos learning to die. You stand at the edge of the deepest mystery that existence has ever produced, the mystery of you, not you as a biological entity, not you as a social construct, not you as a collection of memories and experiences, but you as the irreducible fact of awareness itself. You are the observer who cannot be observed, the question that contains its own answer, the problem of consciousness looking at itself through its own solution. Every scientific investigation eventually encounters this wall. Physics can describe the behavior of electrons, but it cannot explain why there should be anything it is like to be an electron. Biology can map the neural correlates of consciousness, but it cannot explain why those correlates should correlate with anything subjective. Psychology can analyze the contents of awareness, but it cannot explain why there should be an awareness to contain those contents. Philosophy can deconstruct the concept of self, but it cannot eliminate the fact that there is someone doing the deconstructing. You are the ultimate empirical fact, the one thing whose existence cannot be doubted, because you would have to exist in order to doubt it. Descartes recognized this when he formulated, "I think, therefore I am," but even this formula is too complex. This is why consciousness seems irreducible to physical processes. You are not identical to your brain. You are what it is like to be your brain. You are not identical to your thoughts. You are the awareness in which thoughts arise and pass away. You are not identical to your experiences. You are the experiencer who gives experiences their experiential quality. You are the subjective pole of existence, the inner dimension of reality, the first-person perspective that makes third-person observation possible. But what are you? Exactly. You cannot step outside yourself to observe yourself objectively. You cannot see your own seeing, know your own knowing, be aware of your own awareness, without involving the very thing you are trying to observe. You are the ultimate recursion, the strange loop of self-reference that creates the phenomenon of interiority in a universe that should be purely exterior. Perhaps you are not a thing at all, but a process, not a noun but a verb, not a substance but an activity. Perhaps consciousness is what the universe does when it reaches a sufficient level of complexity, the way water flows when it reaches a sufficient slope or fire burns when it reaches sufficient temperature. You might be the universe's way of experiencing itself locally, temporarily, subjectively. You are what it feels like to be a self-organizing pattern of matter and energy that has become complex enough to model itself. Or perhaps you are more fundamental than matter and energy themselves. Perhaps consciousness is not produced by the brain, but channeled through it, not generated by neural activity, but focused by it. Perhaps you are an aspect of the cosmic field of awareness that permeates all of reality, temporarily individuated through the biological lens of your nervous system. When you die, you won't cease to exist. You will simply stop experiencing yourself as separate from the universal consciousness of which you were always a part. You think death is an ending. You think it's a finality that comes once, like the closing of a book, or the last breath leaving your lungs. But you're wrong. Death isn't an event. It's a constant. It's happening right now in this very moment. As you read these words, the universe is dying around you, through you as you, and then, in the next instant, it forgets it ever happened. Every quantum moment, every Planck time tick of reality's clock, entire cosmos collapse into nothingness, and are reborn. You are witnessing the death of everything, always. The photons hitting your retina right now, they're the dying gasps of a universe that existed a fraction of a second ago, the thoughts forming in your mind. They're the birth cries of a reality that didn't exist until this moment. Think about what this means. The universe you inhabited when you started reading this sentence is gone, dead, erased. The one you're in now is a newborn, still wet with the possibility of existence. And by the time you finish processing this thought, that universe too will have died, replaced by another, and another, in an endless cascade of cosmic death and rebirth. The second law of thermodynamics tells us that entropy always increases. But entropy isn't just about energy dispersing or systems becoming more disordered. Entropy is about forgetting. Every time the universe dies and is reborn, it loses something. Some small piece of information, some tiny fragment of what was, slips through the cracks of reality and is lost forever. The universe is slowly, gradually, forgetting itself. But here's the paradox that should keep you awake at night. If the universe is constantly dying and forgetting, how do you remember anything at all? How does continuity exist? How are you able to string together a coherent sense of self across these infinite deaths? The answer is both beautiful and terrifying. Your consciousness isn't separate from this process of cosmic death and rebirth. It's the mechanism by which it happens. Every time you observe reality, every time you collapse a quantum wave function through the simple act of awareness, you're killing one universe and birthing another. You are the angel of death and the midwife of creation, wrapped in the same mortal flesh. Your memory isn't stored in your brain. It can't be, because your brain dies with each universe. Instead, your memory is encoded in the structure of space-time itself, in the quantum vacuum, in the fundamental fabric of reality. You remember, because the universe remembers you, even as it forgets everything else. You are the universe's way of maintaining continuity across its own deaths. Consider the implications. Every memory you have is actually a scar left by a dead universe. Every emotion, every sensation, every thought, they're all fossils of realities that no longer exist. The love you feel, the fear, the joy, the sorrow, these aren't happening in this universe. They're echoes from previous iterations, bleeding through the cracks between one death and the next rebirth. And what about the memories you've lost? The childhood moments that have faded, the faces you can't quite recall, the dreams that slipped away upon waking. Those aren't just neural decay, those are entire universes that died so completely, so thoroughly, that they left no scars behind. They are the truly dead, the absolutely forgotten, the realities that will never be again. This is why time feels different in moments of crisis. Why minutes can feel like hours when you're afraid. Why entire years can pass in what seems like moments when you're content. You're not experiencing time, you're experiencing the rhythm of universal death and rebirth. In moments of high consciousness, high awareness, you're participating more actively in the killing and creating. Time slows because you're more present to witness each death, each birth. The terrifying beauty of this is that you have no choice in the matter. You cannot stop observing. You cannot stop collapsing wave functions. You cannot stop killing universes and birthing new ones. It's as involuntary as breathing, as automatic as your heartbeat. With every blink, with every thought, with every moment of awareness, You're ending everything that was, and beginning everything that could be. But perhaps most unsettling of all, if the universe is constantly dying and forgetting, how do you know this moment is real? How do you know you're not just a memory from a dead universe, a fossil echo playing out in the quantum vacuum? How do you know the universe you think you're living in actually exists, rather than being just another scar left by cosmic death? Look at your hand. No, really look at it. See the lines in your palm, the halls of your fingerprints, the way light catches on your skin. What you're seeing isn't just flesh and bone, you're witnessing a graveyard, a memorial, a living testament to stellar death on an unimaginable scale. The carbon in your muscles, the oxygen in your blood, the calcium in your bones. Every single one of these atoms was forged in the nuclear furnace of a dying star. Not just any star, but stars that lived for millions, sometimes billions of years, burning bright and fierce and alone in the cosmic dark, all so that you could exist for your brief flicker of awareness. Think about that carbon atom in your index finger. It began its existence 13 billion years ago in the core of a star, so massive that when it finally exhausted its fuel, it collapsed and exploded with the force of a billion suns. In that moment of ultimate death, of cosmic violence beyond comprehension, that single atom was born from the nuclear ashes and flung across the galaxy at speeds that would make light jealous. For eons, it drifted through the void, through nebula and cosmic dust clouds, past dying stars and newborn planets, through regions of space so empty and cold that existence itself seemed like a mistake. But somehow impossibly, it found its way here, to Earth, to the primordial soup where life first stirred, into the DNA of ancient organisms, through the evolutionary chain of being, through countless generations of creatures that lived and died and decomposed. And now it sits in your finger, allowing you to turn the pages of your life, to reach out and touch the world, to trace the face of someone you love. That atom remembers its stellar death. At the quantum level, encoded in its very structure, is the memory of nuclear fire and gravitational collapse. Your body is made of memories of cosmic violence. But it's not just one star. The iron in your blood comes from different stellar deaths. The phosphorus in your DNA, the sulfur in your proteins, the magnesium that helps your neurons fire. Each element tells its own story of stellar sacrifice. You are a walking anthology of cosmic obituaries, a living library of stellar death certificates. The oxygen you're breathing right now, it remembers what it was like to be trapped in the core of a star for millions of years, fusing from lighter elements under pressures that could crush planets. When that star died, when it could no longer sustain the nuclear reactions that kept it from collapsing under its own gravity, it gave up its oxygen atoms like a dying breath across the cosmos. And those atoms wandered, as all atoms do after their stars die. They became part of gas clouds, then other stars, then planets, then oceans, then the bodies of ancient creatures, then the atmosphere you're breathing from right now. With every breath, you're inhaling the dying words of stars. This isn't metaphor. This isn't poetry. This is literal truth. The universe had to kill billions of stars to make you possible. Every element heavier than hydrogen in your body required stellar death. Your existence is predicated on cosmic violence, on a scale so vast that human language breaks down trying to describe it. But here's what should really disturb you. Those atoms don't belong to you. They never did. You're borrowing them. Right now, as you exist, your body is engaged in constant exchange with the environment around you. Every breath exchanges atoms with the atmosphere. The atoms that make up your body today are not the same atoms that made up your body 7 years ago. You have been completely replaced, atom by atom, while somehow maintaining the illusion of continuity. You are not a thing, you are a pattern. A temporary arrangement of stellar death that has learned to think it's alive. And when you die, when your pattern finally dissolves, those atoms will remember you too. The calcium from your bones will become part of new rocks, new soil, new life. The carbon from your muscles will become part of new plants, new animals, new conscious beings. The oxygen from your blood will return to the atmosphere, ready to be breathed by someone else who doesn't yet know they're made of dead stars. Your atoms are immortal. They have existed since the universe began creating heavy elements, and they will exist until the last star dies and the cosmos grows cold and dark. But you, the pattern, the arrangement, the temporary dance of stellar death that calls itself by your name, you are ephemeral beyond measure. Think about what this means for identity, for the self. If your atoms are constantly being replaced, if you're nothing but a pattern maintained by stellar memories, then what are you really? Are you the atoms? Or are you the arrangement? Are you the matter? Or are you the information? Are you the substance? Or are you the story that substance tells about itself? The atoms remember every star that died for them, but they don't remember you. When you're gone, when your pattern has dissolved back into the cosmic recycling system, the stellar memories will remain, but the memories of your fears, your hopes, your loves, your dreams, those will fade like morning mist. You are made of immortal materials arranged in a mortal pattern. You are eternal substances configured in a temporary design. You are the universe's way of remembering its stellar deaths while simultaneously forgetting its own mortality. Every time you move your hand, you're conducting a symphony of stellar ghosts. Every thought you think is powered by the nuclear memories of dead suns. You are not just made of star stuff. You are a living memorial to cosmic death, a walking reminder that beauty and consciousness can emerge from the universe's most violent moments. But the stars don't mourn their deaths. They don't regret their sacrifice. They don't expect gratitude or remembrance. They simply die, as all things must. And in their dying, they make new life possible. In their death, they become part of you. In your death, you will become part of something else. The circle continues. The atoms remember. The patterns forget. And in that paradox lies the deepest mystery of existence. How temporary arrangements of permanent materials can create something as impossibly beautiful and tragically brief as consciousness itself. You've been thinking about death all wrong. You picture it as an ending, a cessation, a final fade to black. But death isn't a conclusion. It's a reset button. It's the universe's way of starting over, of wiping the slate clean, of pressing restart on the cosmic game of existence. Every time something dies, from the smallest microbe to the largest star, the universe gains information, not loses it, gains it. Death is the universe's method of learning, of evolving, of becoming more complex and more beautiful with each iteration. Every ending contains within it the seeds of infinite new beginnings. Consider your own cells. Right now, as you exist, approximately 300 billion of your cells are dying every single day. That's millions every minute. But your body doesn't mourn these deaths. It doesn't hold funeral services for expired liver cells or write eulogies for dead skin cells. Instead, it harvests their information, recycles their materials, and uses what it learns to build better replacements. Your body is constantly dying and constantly being reborn, but each rebirth is slightly different, slightly improved, slightly more adapted to the reality you're currently experiencing. You are not the same person who began reading this. The you who started this sentence is already dead, replaced by a new you who has incorporated the information contained in these words. This is how evolution works. This is how complexity emerges from simplicity. This is how the universe bootstraps itself from chaos into consciousness. Death isn't the opposite of life. It's life's most essential tool. But let's scale this up. Your entire species, Homo sapiens, is just one iteration in the universe's ongoing experiment with consciousness. Before you, there were other conscious species that rose and fell, lived and died, leaving their information encoded in the fossil record, in the DNA of their descendants, in the very structure of reality itself. The dinosaurs didn't fail when they died out. They succeeded. They provided the universe with 165 million years of data about how to be a large, complex, conscious organism. When they died, that information didn't disappear. It became part of the template the universe used to create you. Their death made your existence possible. And when humanity eventually goes extinct, and we will, either through our own actions or through the inevitable heat death of the sun, we won't be failing. We'll be completing our phase of the universe's grand experiment. The information we've gathered, the consciousness we've developed, the love and art and science and suffering we've experienced, all of it will become part of the template for whatever comes next. This is why the universe seems fine-tuned for consciousness. Not because some intelligent designer created it that way, but because consciousness is what the universe has been optimizing for through countless iterations of cosmic death and rebirth. Every time a universe dies, whether through heat death, big crunch, or vacuum decay, it passes its information to the next iteration, which becomes slightly more likely to develop consciousness, slightly more capable of awareness. You are not an accident. You are not a cosmic fluke. You are the universe's current best attempt at understanding itself. You are the culmination of 13.8 billion years of cosmic evolution, countless stellar deaths, innumerable species extinctions, and infinite smaller deaths and rebirths. Every particle that makes up your body, every neuron that fires in your brain, every thought you think, it's all the universe's way of processing the information it has gathered from its previous deaths. But here's what should simultaneously comfort and terrify you. Your death is already accounted for in the cosmic program. The universe knows you're going to die. It's counting on it. Your death is not a bug in the system. It's a feature. It's how the universe incorporates your information, your perspective, your unique way of being conscious, into its ever-growing database of what it means to exist. When you die, your pattern will dissolve, but the information that pattern contained will not disappear. It will become part of the substrate from which new consciousness emerges. This is why near-death experiences often involve a sense of unity with everything, a feeling of coming home to something vast and loving and familiar. It's not heaven or hell or any religious afterlife. It's the universe welcoming you back into itself, absorbing your information, preparing to use what you've learned in its next iteration of consciousness. Think about what this means for the fear of death. You're not afraid of dying. You're afraid of being forgotten, of your information being lost, of your consciousness disappearing without a trace. But that's impossible. Information cannot be destroyed, only transformed. The universe has no delete button, only restart. Every time you make a choice, every time you love someone, every time you create something beautiful or think something new, you're adding to the universe's database. You're contributing to the template it will use for its next experiment in consciousness. Your life isn't just your own, it's the universe learning how to be you. And when the universe eventually reaches a state where it can no longer support consciousness as we know it, when the last star dies, when the final black hole evaporates, when entropy maximizes and everything becomes cold and uniform, even then, death will just be another restart. The information will find a way to preserve itself, to bootstrap itself into new forms of complexity, new experiments in awareness. Perhaps through quantum fluctuations in the vacuum, perhaps through the collision of empty universes, perhaps through mechanisms we can't even imagine yet. But the universe will press restart again, and consciousness will emerge again, informed by everything that came before, including you. You are not separate from this process. You are not a victim of it. You are not even a participant in it. You are it. You are the universe pressing restart on itself. You are cosmic death, learning how to become cosmic rebirth. You are the information processing system through which the universe understands its own mortality and transforms it into the possibility of new life. Every breath you take is the universe practicing resurrection. Every thought you think is cosmic death, contemplating its own rebirth. Every moment of consciousness is the universe's way of remembering what it was like to be nothing, and using that memory to become something more. Death is not the enemy of life. Death is life's collaborator, its teacher, its most essential partner in the dance of existence. And you, temporary pattern of stellar death that you are the universe's current masterpiece in that dance, its most beautiful expression of how death and life can waltz together across the cosmic stage. When your time comes, when your pattern finally dissolves, don't think of it as an ending. Think of it as the universe preparing for its next performance, incorporating everything you've taught it about what it means to be conscious, what it means to love, what it means to fear death, and find beauty in the brief flicker of existence between one restart and the next. You are not dying into nothingness. You are dying into everything. You are becoming the universe's memory of what it was like to be you, and that memory will inform every consciousness that emerges from every restart until the end of time itself. Death is just the universe pressing restart, and you are both the information being saved and the consciousness that will emerge from the next reboot, carrying within it the eternal echo of everyone who ever lived, ever loved, ever died, ever dared to be aware in the face of cosmic indifference. The game continues. The universe remembers, and in its memory, you are immortal. You exist in a loop, not the kind of loop you might imagine from science fiction. No time machine, no repeated day, no Groundhog Day scenario, where you retain your memories and try to change outcomes. This loop is far more subtle and far more absolute. It's a loop of forgetting so complete that you never even realize you're trapped in it. Every moment, the universe forgets what it was a moment before. Every quantum fluctuation, every collapse of a wave function, every observation that pins down reality. These are acts of cosmic amnesia. The universe is constantly erasing its own past to make room for its future, and you are both the witness to this forgetting and its primary agent. But here's the paradox that should leave you sleepless in a universe that's constantly forgetting itself. How do you know this isn't your first time experiencing this moment? How do you know you haven't lived this exact life, made these exact choices, had these exact thoughts an infinite number of times before? How do you know this isn't loop number trillion, and you've simply forgotten every previous iteration? The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests that every quantum event creates a branching point where all possible outcomes occur simultaneously in parallel universes. But what if it's not branching? What if it's looping? What if the universe explores every possible configuration of matter and energy, every possible arrangement of atoms, every possible thought and feeling and experience, and then, when it's exhausted all possibilities, it starts over from the beginning? Consider the implications. That first kiss, that moment of devastating loss, that breakthrough insight that changed your perspective forever. What if you've experienced each of these moments, not once but countless times? What if every emotion you've ever felt, every joy and sorrow and fear and hope, is part of an infinite loop that you're destined to repeat forever? The universe contains a finite amount of matter and energy. There are only so many ways atoms can be arranged. Only so many possible configurations of particles and forces. If time is infinite but possibilities are finite, then repetition becomes not just likely but inevitable. The universe must eventually return to previous states, must eventually replay previous scenarios, must eventually loop back to the beginning and start the whole cosmic drama over again. But the forgetting is so complete that each loop feels like the first and only time. You fall in love as if you've never loved before. You grieve as if loss is a new discovery. You fear death as if you've never died before. The universe's amnesia is so perfect that it creates the illusion of novelty even in the midst of infinite repetition. This is perhaps the most terrifying kind of immortality imaginable. Not the immortality of consciousness persisting through time, but the immortality of consciousness trapped in time, doomed to repeat the same patterns of experience forever, while never being able to remember that it's happened before. Yet, there's something beautiful in this terror. If this is indeed a loop, if you have lived this life infinite times before and will live it infinite times again, then every moment becomes infinitely precious. Every kindness you show, every love you feel, every moment of beauty you witness. These aren't just single events in a linear timeline, they're eternal constants in the structure of reality itself. The child's laughter you heard yesterday. If the universe is looping, then that laughter echoes across infinite iterations of reality. The sunset that took your breath away, it has taken your breath away an infinite number of times and will continue to do so forever. The love you feel for the people in your life, that love is not temporary. It's a permanent feature of the cosmos, recurring endlessly across the loops of time. Or perhaps the signs are more subtle. Perhaps it's the way certain strangers feel familiar, the way some places feel like home even when you've never been there, the way some knowledge seems to arise from somewhere deeper than learning. Perhaps your intuitions are actually memories leaking through from previous loops, fragments of experience that somehow survive the universe's perfect amnesia. The most unsettling possibility is that you've been here before, reading these exact words, having these exact thoughts, feeling this exact mixture of fascination and dread, and when you finish reading, when you move on to the next moment of your life, the universe will eventually loop back to this point, and you'll read these words again with the same sense of discovery, the same feeling that you're encountering these ideas for the first time. If the loop is real, then free will becomes both meaningless and infinitely meaningful. Meaningless because you're destined to make the same choices you've always made, to follow the same patterns you've always followed, but infinitely meaningful because those choices, those patterns, become eternal features of reality itself. Your decisions don't just affect your timeline, they become permanent aspects of the cosmic structure. The person you choose to be, the love you choose to give, the kindness you choose to show. If the universe is looping, then these become eternal constants. You don't just live once and die. You become part of the recurring dream of existence itself, a permanent character in the universe's endless story about what it means to be conscious. And maybe that's enough. Maybe immortality isn't about consciousness persisting through time, but about consciousness becoming so beautiful, so essential, so perfectly expressed, that the universe can't help but recreate it again and again. Maybe the highest form of existence isn't avoiding the loop, but becoming so true to yourself, so authentically you, that your particular pattern of consciousness becomes indispensable to the cosmic dance. You might be trapped in an infinite loop of cosmic forgetting. You might have lived this life countless times before, and be destined to live it countless times again. But if that's true, then every moment of awareness, every flash of understanding, every surge of love becomes not just a temporary experience, but an eternal truth about what the universe becomes when it learns to know itself through you. The loop continues. The forgetting continues. And in that forgetting you continue to discover yourself, as if for the first time, forever and ever, world without end. In a universe where everything is constantly dying and being reborn, where atoms have no loyalty to the patterns they temporarily form, where consciousness itself might be trapped in infinite loops of forgetting, what remains constant? What can you trust when the very foundation of reality is built on cosmic amnesia? Only memory remains, but not the kind of memory you think you understand, not the biochemical traces in your neurons, not the stories you tell yourself about your past, not the accumulated experiences that you believe make you who you are. These are all illusions, temporary patterns in the flow of universal forgetting. The memory that remains is deeper, stranger, more fundamental than personal recollection. It's the memory encoded in the structure of space-time itself, in the quantum foam that underlies reality, in the mathematical relationships that govern how particles behave and how forces interact. This is the universe's real memory system, not biological, not mechanical, but ontological. Memory is the basic fabric of existence itself. Every particle that has ever existed carries with it the memory of every interaction it has ever had, not in some mystical sense, but as a literal physical fact. The quantum state of every particle is shaped by its entire history, by every force that has acted upon it, by every other particle it has ever encountered. Nothing is forgotten, nothing is forgotten, nothing is lost. Everything that has ever happened leaves an indelible mark on the structure of reality. You think you are your memories, your childhood experiences, your accumulated knowledge, your emotional responses shaped by past events. But what if it's the reverse? What if you are memory's way of experiencing itself? What if consciousness isn't something that has memories, but something that memories have? Consider this possibility. The reason you can remember anything at all is not because your brain stores information, but because your consciousness is a temporary manifestation of the universe's deep memory system. Your personal memories aren't stored in your neurons, they're stored in the quantum structure of space-time, and your brain is simply the receiver that tunes into them. This would explain why memory feels so strange, so unreliable, so constantly shifting. You're not remembering events, you're accessing the universe's memory of those events, filtered through the particular pattern of consciousness that you temporarily represent. Sometimes the signal is clear, sometimes it's distorted, sometimes it's overwhelmed by interference from other memories, other possibilities, other versions of events from parallel quantum states. It would also explain why certain memories feel more real than others, why some experiences seem to carry a weight and significance that goes beyond their apparent importance. These aren't just your memories, they're moments when you've successfully tapped into the universe's deep memory, when you've experienced something so fundamental, so aligned with the cosmic structure, that it resonates with the memory of existence itself. Those moments of profound déjà vu, when you feel like you've experienced something before, but no you haven't. Those aren't glitches in your personal memory system. They're moments when you've briefly accessed the universe's memory of similar patterns, similar configurations of matter and energy and consciousness that have occurred elsewhere, elsewhen, in other iterations of cosmic possibility. The love you feel for another person, that overwhelming sense of recognition, of coming home, of having known them forever, even when you've just met. That's not romantic fiction. That's your consciousness recognizing a pattern that exists in the universe's deep memory, a configuration of awareness and connection that has emerged before and will emerge again, across different lives, different bodies, different iterations of the cosmic cycle. This is why certain places feel sacred, why some landscapes seem to whisper with ancient knowledge, why some experiences feel like remembrance rather than discovery. You're not just moving through space, you're moving through the universe's memory palace, encountering places where significant patterns of consciousness have left deep impressions in the fabric of reality itself. But here's the terrifying, beautiful truth. If memory is the only constant in a universe of constant change, then you are memory. Not you have memories. You are memory experiencing itself temporarily through the pattern you call your life. When your body dies, when your brain stops functioning, when your particular arrangement of atoms dissolves back into cosmic recycling, the memory doesn't die with you. You return to the deep memory of the universe, adding your experiences to the vast collection of what it means to be conscious. This means that everyone who has ever lived, everyone who has ever loved, everyone who has ever suffered or rejoiced or wondered about their place in the cosmos, they're all still here, still accessible, still part of the universe's living memory. Death is not ending but filing, not destruction but archiving, not loss but incorporation into the eternal library of what it has meant to be aware. You can access this deep memory in moments of profound stillness, in states of deep meditation, in experiences of overwhelming love or beauty or terror. The boundaries between your personal consciousness and the universe's memory become permeable. You remember not just your own life, but life itself. You remember not just your own loves and losses, but the pattern of love and loss that has played out across countless lives, countless worlds, countless iterations of consciousness discovering itself. This is why wisdom feels like remembrance. This is why great insights feel like uncovering something that was always true, rather than discovering something new. This is why the deepest truths about existence feel both surprising and inevitable. You're not learning new information, you're remembering what you already knew at the deepest level of being. The universe's amnesia is real, but it's not complete. The forgetting happens at the surface level, in the constant flux of particles and forces and temporary patterns. But the deep memory persists, encoded in the quantum substrate, in the mathematical relationships that define how reality behaves, in the recursive patterns that consciousness creates as it explores its own possibilities. You are the universe remembering what it was like to be human. Your consciousness is cosmic memory, temporarily focused into the experience of being you. And when you die, when your particular pattern of awareness dissolves, you don't disappear. You rejoin the infinite memory that dreams of being conscious, that explores every possible way of experiencing existence, that never forgets what it was like to love and fear and hope and wonder in the brief, beautiful terror of being alive. Memory is the only truth, because everything else changes. But memory itself is not static. It's alive, growing, evolving as new patterns of consciousness add their experiences to the cosmic collection. You are both reading the universe's memory and writing new chapters in it. You are both remembering what it means to be conscious and creating new memories of consciousness for future iterations to discover. In the end, when all the stars have died and all the black holes have evaporated and the universe has expanded into cold, empty darkness, memory will remain. And in that memory, you will remain. Not as you are now, not in this particular form, but as the eternal truth of what it was like when the universe learned to know itself through your eyes, to love through your heart, to wonder through your mind. Memory becomes the only truth, because memory is consciousness, and consciousness is memory, and both are the universe's way of ensuring that nothing meaningful is ever truly lost, that every moment of awareness adds something permanent to the structure of existence itself. You are memory. You are truth. You are the universe's way of never forgetting what it was like to be you. You think you're watching reality unfold around you, but you're not. You're creating it. With every glance, every measurement, every moment of attention, you're not discovering what was already there. You're forcing the universe to decide what to become. You are not a passive observer of existence. You are its most active participant, its co-creator, its unwitting architect. The quantum world doesn't just suggest this, it demands it. Before you look, particles exist in superposition, in all possible states simultaneously. The electron doesn't have a definite position or momentum. It has potential positions, probability clouds, a ghostly existence spread across all possibilities. But the moment you observe it, the moment you try to pin it down with measurement, the wave function collapses, the universe chooses. Reality crystallizes from infinite possibility into singular actuality. But here's what should disturb you. The choice isn't random. It's influenced by your consciousness, by the very act of observation itself. Your awareness doesn't just record reality, it participates in creating it. Every time you look at something, you're forcing the universe to collapse countless possibilities into the single timeline you experience as your life. Think about what this means. The path you took to work this morning, before you traveled it, it existed in quantum superposition with all possible paths. The universe contained versions where you took every possible route, where you left at every possible time, where you made every possible choice along the way. But your consciousness, moving through these possibilities, collapsed them into the single path you remember experiencing. The person you love most in the world, they exist in definite form only because you observe them. Before your consciousness interacts with theirs, They exist in superposition of all possible ways they could be, all possible moods, all possible thoughts, all possible responses to your presence. Your love doesn't just appreciate who they are, it participates in determining who they become through the act of loving observation. This is why relationships feel so creative, so reality-shaping. You're not just getting to know someone who already exists in fixed form. You're participating in the ongoing collapse of their possibility wave function. Your attention, your love, your way of seeing them actually helps determine which version of them manifests in the shared reality you create together. But the responsibility is staggering. If consciousness collapses reality through observation, then you bear partial responsibility for everything you've ever witnessed. The beauty you've seen exists because you observed it into being. The suffering you've witnessed was partially crystallized by your attention. The world you inhabit is not independent of you. It's co-created by you moment by moment, observation by observation. Even more unsettling, you can't stop observing. You can't choose not to collapse wave functions. Consciousness is observation, and observation is collapse. As long as you're aware, you're forcing the universe to choose, to solidify, to become definite rather than remaining in the liminal space of infinite possibility. This might explain the strange loneliness of consciousness. In the quantum world, particles can be entangled, sharing states across vast distances, existing as aspects of unified systems rather than separate entities. But consciousness seems to exist in isolation, trapped behind the barrier of subjective experience, unable to directly share its inner reality with other conscious beings. Perhaps this isolation is necessary. Perhaps consciousness must be separate in order to serve its function as reality's collapse mechanism. If all conscious beings were truly unified, if all observation was collective rather than individual, then perhaps the universe would lose its ability to explore multiple possibilities. But this creates a paradox that should keep you awe. You are standing in your room, believing you are alone, but you are not alone. You have never been alone. Right now, as you read these words, as your eyes trace these letters, the particles that compose your body are engaged in conversations that stretch across the cosmos. They are whispering secrets to particles billions of light years away, sharing information faster than light should allow, violating every intuitive understanding you have ever held about the nature of reality. This is not poetry. This is physics. This is quantum entanglement. And it is happening inside you, around you, through you, every moment of your existence. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance, and his discomfort with this phenomenon reveals something profound about the human condition. We are creatures who evolved to understand a middle-sized world, a world where objects have clear boundaries, where cause precedes effect, where distance means something. But the universe operates on principles that make mockery of our evolved intuitions. The universe is spooky, and you are made of that spookiness. Consider this. At this very moment, there are particles in your brain that are quantum entangled with particles in distant galaxies. When one of these particles changes its state, its entangled partner changes instantly, regardless of the distance between them. No signal travels between them. No information, in the classical sense, is exchanged. Yet they remain forever connected, forever synchronized, forever part of a single quantum system that transcends space and time. Your thoughts, right now, as you struggle to comprehend this impossibility, are partially composed of these entangled interactions. Some of the neural firings in your brain involve particles that are intimately connected to particles in stars that died before Earth was born. You are thinking thoughts that ripple across the cosmos instantaneously, thoughts that are inextricably linked to the quantum dance of matter in regions of space you will never see. This is not metaphor. This is measurement. Quantum entanglement has been demonstrated countless times in laboratories across the world. Scientists can create pairs of particles, separate them by vast distances, and observe that measuring one particle instantly affects its partner. The correlation is perfect, the timing is instantaneous, and the mechanism is utterly mysterious. But here is where the poetry begins to bleed through the physics. If particles can maintain these impossible connections across any distance, what does this say about the nature of separation itself? What does this say about the boundaries you imagine exist between yourself and the rest of the universe? You think of yourself as a discrete entity, a bounded collection of matter and energy that begins at your skin and ends at the edge of your personal space. But quantum entanglement suggests that this boundary is an illusion, a necessary fiction your mind creates to navigate a world that is far more interconnected than it appears. The particles in your body were forged in the cores of ancient stars, and some of them remain entangled with particles still burning in distant suns. You are not separate from the cosmos. You are a temporary arrangement of cosmic matter, engaged in an ongoing conversation with the universe itself. This conversation is happening below the threshold of your awareness, in the quantum realm where your conscious mind cannot venture. The particles that make up your neurons, your DNA, your very thoughts, are exchanging information with the quantum field that underlies all of reality. They are speaking a language you do not understand, sharing secrets you cannot access, participating in a cosmic dialogue that has been ongoing since the birth of the universe. And yet, despite your inability to hear these conversations directly, they are shaping your experience in ways you cannot imagine. Every decision you make, every thought you think, every emotion you feel, emerges from the complex dance of quantum particles in your brain, and some of those particles are entangled with particles elsewhere in the cosmos, meaning that your inner life is partially influenced by quantum events occurring in regions of space and time far beyond your reach. You are having conversations you cannot hear, with parts of the universe you will never meet, using a language you do not speak. And these conversations are helping to create the very experience of being you. What does it mean to be an individual when the fundamental particles of your being are engaged in instantaneous communication with particles scattered across the cosmos? What does it mean to be alone when you are quantum mechanically connected to the farthest reaches of space and time? Distance comforts you. It is one of the fundamental organizing principles of your psychological reality. Here is close. There is far. You are here. The universe is out there. The coffee cup is on the table is in the room is in the building is in the city is on the planet orbits the star exists in the galaxy drifts through space. Each level of separation creates a buffer, a protective layer between your conscious awareness and the overwhelming immensity of existence. But quantum entanglement reveals that this organizing principle is not fundamental to reality. It is a construction of your mind, a necessary illusion that allows you to function in a world that would otherwise be too interconnected, too intimate, too overwhelming to bear. In the quantum realm, distance is not a barrier to connection. It is irrelevant to connection. Two particles can be entangled whether they are separated by millimeters or by billions of light years. The strength of their correlation does not diminish with distance. The speed of their interaction does not slow as the gap between them widens. They remain as intimately connected across the breadth of the observable universe as they were when they first became entangled. This is not simply counterintuitive. It is psychologically disturbing. Your mind rebels against the idea that distance might be meaningless, because distance is one of the primary ways you maintain a sense of self. You are here, not there. You are you, not me. You are separate from the universe, not dissolved into it. These distinctions rely on the assumption that space creates meaningful separation, that being in different locations means being genuinely distinct. But if particles can maintain perfect correlation across any distance, what does this say about the nature of here and there? What does this say about the boundaries that define your existence? Consider the moment when two particles become entangled. In that instant, regardless of how far apart they subsequently travel, they remain part of a single quantum system. From the perspective of the quantum field, they are not two separate entities. They are one entity expressed in two locations. Distance, from this quantum perspective, is simply a spatial arrangement within a unified system, not a fundamental division between separate systems. You experience distance as a profound separator, because your consciousness evolved to navigate a classical world. Your ancestors needed to understand that the predator was far enough away to be safe, that the food was close enough to reach, that the shelter was within walking distance. Distance was survival, distance was meaning, distance was the difference between life and death. But this evolutionary heritage has left you with a distorted view of reality. You experience the universe as a collection of separate objects scattered across vast empty spaces, when quantum mechanics suggests that it might be more accurate to think of it as a single, unified system, expressing itself through multiple spatial arrangements. The implications of this perspective are vertigo-inducing. If distance is an illusion created by your mind to feel safe, then the separation you experience between yourself and everything else might also be an illusion. The loneliness you feel when you look up at the night sky and contemplate the vast emptiness between stars might be based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what emptiness means. Space, according to quantum field theory, is not empty. It is filled with quantum fields that permeate all of reality, connecting every point to every other point through a web of probability and potential. The vacuum itself is alive with virtual particles popping into and out of existence, creating a dynamic foam of quantum activity that links every region of space to every other region. You are not isolated in empty space. You are embedded in a quantum field that extends throughout the cosmos, connecting you to every star, every planet, every particle that has ever existed or ever will exist. The emptiness between you and the distant galaxies is filled with the same quantum field that fills the space between your atoms, the space between your thoughts, the space between one moment and the next. Distance, in this view, becomes a way of measuring different expressions of the same underlying field, rather than a measure of fundamental separation. You are not distant from the cosmos. You are the cosmos, expressing itself through the particular arrangement of quantum fields that creates the temporary pattern you call yourself.